Hi, this is Joe Lindsley, American, reporting to you from Kyiv, Ukraine, on July 4th, 2025, the day of American independence, and a day of both absolute hellfire here in Kyiv and also incredible resistance. I've been in Ukraine every single minute of Russia's full scale invasion. I've seen a lot of horrible things. I've been through a lot, and what we endured last night here in Kyiv was like it was screaming and screeching demons flying through the air. Iranian drones, Russian missiles, some sounds I've never heard before. I heard last night, and it was what I want to share with you here today is comments I wrote, a thread, an essay I wrote on X while I was in shelter, while the building was shaking under that hellfire. Comments I wrote really directed toward President Trump and my honest and clear, my honest and clear emotions and thoughts, and a lot of things that I haven't said heretofore, but that I think need to be said. And there's so much partisanship that gets involved on all sides in American politics. And Ukraine, as an American, I see that Ukraine should be separate from that. And in order to do that, you have to say some uncomfortable things. And I also realize in order to reach people, every politician needs to be able to sell something to their base. And that's how it is. And that's a reality in America. And so I want to share with you here the words that I wrote to Americans, to MAGA, but especially to President Trump. And I know some people there in the White House, maybe somehow to get through. Maybe there's some kind of credibility that comes from saying such words when you're under hellfire. And the one thing I'll have to note, and we'll share this in our videos on X and Instagram, but even a few hours after this horrible attack, and there was Russia fired 539 drones and 11 missiles upon Ukraine, ballistic missiles. I mean, they're absolutely terrifying. Much of that was focused on Kyiv City. And I mean, it was tough to breathe. There was one point last night when in the shelter, people start saying, "Oh, do you smell that?" And people start coughing, and it was rough. And this morning, it was still very difficult to breathe in Kyiv City because of this horrible attack. And this is, when we look at the death toll, it's still fairly low, but it's getting higher with each of these attacks. And there will be a breaking point when the air defense fails because it's depleted, and the death toll is going to go from fairly low to skyrocketingly high. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. And so, with that in mind, I will share with you what I wrote. It was during this missile attack, so some raw emotion, but I stand by it, and that's why I'm sharing it here. So, with that, excuse me if you don't mind, I'll read this to you. Dear President Trump, Happy 4th of July Eve from an American in Kyiv, a city dedicated to St. Michael the Archangel under Iranian drone and missile attack. As a side note, I won't do many side notes, but President Trump, after was nearly assassinated last summer, and then before the October election, he cryptically posted on his social media the prayer to St. Michael the Archangel. We'll put it up on the screen, and that's all. He posted the prayer to Saint Michael for protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. And to me, that's really interesting that he was the help of Saint Michael, who's the great biblical fighter against evil in the heavens. Trump was seeking his protection, and Kyiv City, in Ukraine in general, but especially Kyiv City, is explicitly dedicated to Saint Michael the Archangel. In fact, as you go around Kyiv City, you'll see banners saying, the city is the Saint Michael the Archangel is the patron and protector of Kyiv City. The government pays for that, and this is, you really feel that when you're under such an attack. So that's why I mentioned this, and I say this. I won't have any more sides as I read my note, but I want you to understand that everything I wrote is attuned to things that I think Trump does understand or cares about, and trying to connect that to what's happening here. So here's what I wrote on X to President Trump and anyone who would listen. Dear President Donald Trump, happy 4th of July Eve from an American in Kyiv, a city dedicated to St. Michael the Archangel, currently under Iranian drone and Russian missile attack. Some who work for you in the White House might know me a bit, and I have a question that the fake news media will never ask you. How many have tried to stop you, President Trump, and to stop the American people from reasserting the will of the people against the elites? It's not been easy, eh? They've even tried to kill you. Well, that's what Russia is doing to Ukraine. What they have tried to do to you is what Russia is doing to Ukraine. Think about that. Ukraine, you see, is much like you, Mr. Trump, and also much like the Americans whom you represent, peaceful people who just want to live freely. But the tyrannical Kremlin, which is globalist in its own barbaric way, cannot have freedom anywhere nearby. And so, like a sad school shooter, the Kremlin, as I'm sure you are learning, is jealous of people who work hard and live freely. Jealous, that is, of the Ukrainians. The effete globalists in Europe, they talk about Ukraine, they wave the flag, because they know that Ukraine is the American Marines of Europe. The Macrons can sleep peacefully in Paris because the Ukrainians are vigilant. The effete globalists are afraid of Ukraine too. They don't want to arm what is really the MAGA of Europe. And if you sent a delegation from the White House here, you would see that. Here in Ukraine, and I also direct this to Elon Musk and to JD Vance, here in Ukraine, here we see in a clear, non metaphorical way how the excess of woke liberalism kills. First, it kills the heroes. And by the way, and at this moment, I had to pause because the drones are coming toward me. And these Iranian drones, they sound like lawnmowers or mopeds, but as you sort of ignore that because that's happening constantly. But when it's preparing to hit its target, the drone, as it's coming down toward you, you can hear a distinct change in the sound as it's careening, but still at a methodical pace. Gives you enough time to ponder your fate. You know when the drone is about to hit its target. And so at this moment, as I'm typing, surrounded by people in the shelter, everyone freezes and you brace yourself. The impact was nearby. Anyway, so I was speaking to Elon Musk, JD Vance, and Donald Trump that here we see in a clear, non-metaphorical way how the excess of woke liberalism kills. First, it kills the heroes because it's the heroes like the Ukrainians who do the fighting to protect the soft, comfortable people. Side note, Mr. President, and I said, side note, Mr. President, on the day of our freedom birthright, the 4th of July, it's one thing to hear an Islamist Iranian drone buzzing in the sky. It sounds like a lawnmower. But it's a whole other hell to hear that shrieking Iranian drone careening downward toward you, which is exactly what happened at that moment. After we recovered from that moment of near hit, I continued. So here are my words to you, Mr. President. To borrow from Mark Twain, I would have written a shorter letter if I'd had the time. Joe Biden and the people who actually ran the show under Biden, the people really in charge, were weak and horrible. They talked a good game, but they permitted Russia and they restricted Ukraine. Worse, Joe Biden's secret chief of staff, the very clear-minded, drug-free Hunter Biden, was taking money from Moscow for years. So is it any wonder that the Biden White House routinely restricted Ukraine from winning? They actively stopped Ukraine from winning. Autopin, aka Joe Biden, we can call him that, Autopin. Autopin will go down as one of the worst presidents in our history. But your administration's actions, President Trump, the past months vis-a-vis Ukraine, are now bordering on being more disastrous than Joe Biden's. It's hard to imagine that. But here I hear the bombs bursting in air. It's worse now. Biden not only effed things up, but in this Biden not only effed things up, but his horrible policies also distorted President Trump's view of reality. Biden was like Theoden in Lord of the Rings. And I share the clip. We can look at the clip. And I think maybe President Trump is too. Sort of trapped and needs to be released from this spell. And that's why, please watch out for the Pentagon sneaks in your midst. Get rid of that poison. President Trump, in your first term, you were surrounded by vipers and poisonous people. I know it from experience. I know some of them. You know it. And you might think they're gone, but they're there. They're just smarter this time, including at the Pentagon. They're there. And then I did mention, I said, watch out for Leonard Leo. I was bold. I was, I thought I could be dead in a few minutes. And then I continued as we get to the conclusion. Will the world look back on 2025 as a true age of courage, which is the only thing that will make this time golden? Or as the age of the last gasp of American P.T. Barnum circus buffoonery? Will the world reflect on how Leo and Trump and the Ukrainians, not the government but the people, stood tall and free like Thatcher, Reagan, and John Paul II? The choice is yours, Mr. President. The choice, Mr. President, is yours. And then, as the bombs are falling and whistling past us, I continued, and in the end is my beginning, and in the beginning is my end. Time present and time past. Now the light falls. That was the best I could remember from T.S. Eliot. I think from his poem East Coker. That was on my mind as those missiles danced about in their dance macabre and landed all around us, with more reports of more coming in. And then I decided to send one more post. And by the way, Mr. President, I will say the thing that we are not supposed to say. Oh, get ready. Names we are not supposed to speak. But the twins Vindman, Tweedledee Dee and Tweedledee Dum, effed over Trump, Zelensky, and Ukraine. They were serving themselves and protecting the Bidens, whose family took gobs of money from Moscow. By pretending that the money was Ukrainian, the American Democrats turned MAGA against Ukraine, while restricting Ukraine from winning when the Democrats were in charge. Ha! All along, the truth of the Russia hoax is that Moscow paid effing Bidens. Will you join the usual Washington cast of liars, cowards, thieves, self-servers? Or will you, Mr. President, break through this wall? If I survive this night, more on this topic later. Good night, and happy 4th of July, in the year of our Lord 2025, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 249th. Thank you all for listening. I welcome your comments and intense feedback. But I'm very glad I was in Kyiv. I had just arrived on the train as the Russians were attacking the city. We had to sneak out through underground passageways. We couldn't go into the train station and get as fast, quickly as you could away from the station. And I'm very glad that I was there for that, because even somewhere else in Ukraine, it's easy not to feel that intensity. And perhaps I was getting a bit complacent in my language and my reporting and my communications about what's happening here, what's at stake. And so I hope last night sort of put me in the right spot to be more forceful. And please like, follow, subscribe, and share. You can follow at JP Lindsley on X and Instagram. My great team great Ukrainian team that puts together these videos to explain what's happening, to help you see things in a bit different perspective, and to acknowledge and honor the great nobility that we see here all the time. And we have to, everyone who supports Ukraine, we have to talk openly. We can't be afraid. If we think something's going to be effective, we should talk about it. But we have to still believe that we can get America on the right side, and I believe it because I'm an American, and that's freedom is our birthright. And I know many people in Washington, and I know that when it comes down to it, they will want to do the right thing. So with that, I say happy 4th of July. And we've seen some bad times here recently. But we also see great courage and honor and hope. So thank you. This is Joe Lindsley reporting from Kyiv on American Independence Day, July 4th, 2025. Preparing for another long, difficult night.